So Congressman Sherman is with us, and I understand that you can hear us now, Congressman. So who is best to run this of the three that are going to be speaking on Capitol Hill? And Michelle mentioned the turf wars, certainly. After what you've heard this morning, what are your opinions?
Well, I do think a new consumer protection agency makes sense, but what's critical is that we don't transfer to the executive branch, and I don't care what part of the executive branch, lawmaking. It is Congress that should be deciding what are the basic rules to protect consumers. An administrative agency should have regulations that only fill in the gaps between this and that word in the legislation. If this is an idea where we're going to punt to the executive branch the decision of what is necessary to protect consumers, what products should be allowed, what products should not be allowed, then this will be part of the overall erosion of congressional authority.
Okay. Congressman Hensarling, I want to just change gears a little bit and talk about the news that broke yesterday on health care. It is not going to be passed, or they're not going to try to pass it before August. Is this a defeat for the president and a victory for the Republicans in your mind?
Well, I'll believe it when I see it. You know, the speaker or the president doesn't call me in for their counsel, but it's clear that the American people are very nervous about a health care system that will deny them choices, that will deny them the health care that they need when they need it at a price they can afford, and then they're going to end up paying over $1 trillion. That's according to the Congressional Budget Office appointed by Democrats. So clearly what you see is that the American people are very nervous about this system, and today they want jobs, and $1 trillion of debt, and taking away their health care choices is not a way to go about it.
Representative Sherman, what do you think when it comes to this August deadline that seems now to have been pushed back? Is this going to happen at all?
Well, I hope we pass the bill by the end of the year. Keeping the present system would be the real disaster. It's not a choice between today's health care and what's being proposed, because if you stick with the present system, it gets worse every year. Think of what's happened over the last 10 years to coverage, the number of people who don't have coverage, the premiums, the deductibles, the exclusions, the pre-existing conditions.
But with all due respect, Representative Sherman, the CBO came out and said the plans on the table thus far do not control costs in any way. They raise the cost to the taxpayer, nor do they provide universal coverage. So it doesn't seem like any of the bills out there achieve your party's mission.
Well, many of the bills out there provide near universal coverage. I'll settle for 97% coverage if we can't get 100. We need to do more to conserve costs. At the same time, many of the proposals put forward have been scored as saving roughly $500 billion. But this is expensive. You're talking about 50 million Americans who need to get health coverage, who need to get adequate health care, and I don't think we'll be able to do that at no cost to any taxpayer. We're going to insulate middle-class taxpayers. There are other ways to generate the funds.
It sounds like you're giving up, though, on cost controls when you say that, because the whole mission was to control costs, and now it sounds like that isn't necessarily the mission.
The mission is coverage and cost containment, and we need to achieve both goals. There needs to be more in this bill to control costs. I think there will be before it comes up for a vote. Congressman
Hensarling, let's go back to the focus of today's hearing, regulatory reform. I heard your very strong opening remarks in which you brought up Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Is that a gaping hole, you think, in the administration's plan, is that it does not deal with Fannie and Freddie?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Fannie and Freddie were at the epicenter of the federal policy that either incented, cajoled, or mandated financial institutions to lend money to people to buy homes who ultimately couldn't afford to pay it back. I mean, you had this neither fish nor fowl entity, these government-sponsored enterprises that created these huge systemic risk, and now the taxpayer's picking up the tab. I mean, I just think, frankly, it's unconscionable that the administration would be silent on this. So on the one hand, Secretary Geithner appears to have said that, yes, this is a huge underlying cause, but for whatever reason, they want to kick the can down the road. And meanwhile, taxpayers continue to pay out billions and billions and billions of dollars to resuscitate these firms at the same time that they're government-owned, functionally government-owned, and increasing their market share.
Strong words, Congressman Sherman. Kicking the can down the road, unconscionable. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think if we were to abolish Fannie and Freddie the way some of my Republican colleagues are suggesting, home prices would take another huge dive. That would be terrible for the economy. I don't think that the actions taken by Fannie and Freddie going forward have been a mistake. I don't think that they are funding loans that people cannot afford to repay. I think the real problem was the credit rating agencies that gave AAA to Alt-A, and many of those loans had nothing to do with Fannie or Freddie.
And Congressman Hensarling, that was really the response of Secretary Geithner, who said, hey, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are the ones doing the financing in the markets right now. You go after them, you get rid of mortgage financing in this country.
Well, one, you don't do it overnight, but there must be a transition. You need to signal to the markets that this system of privatizing your profits and socializing your losses are going to have to end. In the Republican plan, we have a multi-year process that would transition Fannie and Freddie away from their taxpayer infusions and essentially get back to market discipline. No, we're not going to do it overnight, but anytime you have government come in, it creates a monopoly. They've taken a duopoly and put it on steroids. They're making the situation worse. We need a plan to get them back to market competition. And yeah, I admit it'll take a number of years to get there, but let's start today.
And at this point, you have no idea whether or not the private market would step in because you've got this big government agency.
And also
government
a huge debate about what
yes.
role Fannie and Freddie did play in the
Absolutely, or the rating agencies.
Let me make one more point about the hearings today, and that is the Geithner proposal is for unlimited permanent bailout authority for systemically important institutions on Wall Street.
And how would you define systemically important institutions?
Under the bill, any way the administration, the executive branch decides to do it from year to year, from time to time. If you liked $700 billion for TARP for a couple of years, how are you going to like unlimited TARP permanently?
So you're opposed to that, Congressman Sherman, is that correct?
Sounds like it.
You're opposed to that. What are you going to do to limit it?
I'm going to propose an amendment that says that you cannot risk government money without congressional approval, and I mean future congressional approval. We'll see if we're able to get that through. There's one thing Wall Street wants, and that is permanent, unlimited bailout authority without having to ever come to Congress again. They liked the $700 billion. They're looking to take more risks. They're looking to have the implied guarantee of the taxpayer. And the one thing that's messy was that one time when the House of Representatives voted against it and then voted for it later.
Let's get your colleagues' response.
Can you agree with that now? We end on a note of agreement here?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you know, Democrats and Republicans can agree. Brad and I agree. We do not want America to be a perpetual bailout nation. And I would certainly be willing to work with him on his legislation.
But does that mean that you're taking away from the Fed that ultimate right they had to step in into emergency situations?
Good question.
Well, at least with respect to the Republican bill, we will allow the Fed to keep its 13.3 exigent powers, but not to bail out a particular financial institution, but to provide broader liquidity to the economy. And we will take 13.3 and we will put it in a sandbox and limit its duration and its size so that the Fed doesn't have unlimited powers to impose taxpayer liability in perpetuity.
Let's see how far that agreement goes. Congressman Sherman, are you also in agreement that the Fed's 13.3 emergency authority should be limited?
I think you need to limit 13.3, but you also have to make sure that you're not adding more bailout authority to the statutes.
I'm sorry, let me be specific here. How would you limit the Fed's 13.3 authority?
I think you should limit it in terms of quantity, and you should impose by statute what Bernanke has already said he imposes upon himself now, which is that he is not allowed to invest in anything that isn't in effect AAA, that it isn't as close to risk-free as you can get. That has been his position. I like the fact that he has taken a conservative or limited view of what 13.3 provides, but I think we ought to make sure that future Fed chairmen also take a limited view by making it more clear.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back.